Hello and welcome to my channel Giggling Babel, a channel for informative stand-up and comedy on autism. Unfortunately, my mum was unable to film the whole of the presentation, which was for Priory Hayes Grove. Anyway, so I'm going to be nattering on for the first few slides. Why am I doing this? I started this because I met a fellow autistic person who wanted to do a autism appreciation party, and I wanted to do something for that performance rights. I didn't do that. I ended up performing it at a family do at Christmas and ended up doing this. Last year, 2018 in September, at the age of 25, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder level 2 without intellectual impairment, also known as Asperger syndrome. And one of the things you learn is that not a lot is known about high-functioning autistic people or Asperger's, and this can be a problem. And talking about it can mean that people shut down, so stand-up is brilliant for doing that. I hope you really enjoy this. This is a story, but it's a story that is not necessarily in the right order for people who are not autistic, because we don't work the same way. So the slides may not make sense to you, but they make sense to me, and they make some kind of story. The first slide, which of course has not been recorded either by my inadequate mother and filmer, is mimicking or masking in A.S.D. What is mimicking or masking?
Hello.
Did anybody didn't hear that? I'll just play it again.
Yeah, can you say hello?
What does it mean? How do we do it? Who does it? And do we always get it right? The answer is no, we don't always get it right. Mimicking and masking is a bit like the parrot you may just have heard. But in this respect, it's not a parrot to a human. It's autistic, usually females, trying to mimic what we think, in quotation marks, are the non-autistic people. I say think because it takes a lot of discernment and we don't always get it right, or the context right. So when you get a diagnosis, the first thing that happens is you have a reaction. And I think apart from the obvious non-reaction, there's two ways that you can react, two brackets. It's either it's a complete bolt out of a balloon, you don't know where it comes from, or it all starts to make sense. And for me, I was the second one. Agree with someone, they start arguing back, like I was disagreeing with them. That's why I make people laugh when I'm not trying to. Now obviously this is comedy, so I am trying to make you laugh, so feel free to laugh if you think it's funny. And that's why the only people who seem to understand me are my cats. And to be honest, I don't think my cats understand me either sometimes. I say things like, no, my hand is not a chew toy. And it takes one big bite out of it. I say things like, no, my face is not a pillow to sit on. And that's not what it would sound like in real life, of course. It would sound something more like, Now, I'm talking about cats, and anybody who knew me before the diagnosis knew that I was obsessed with cats, so they probably guessed that it would turn into a special interest. What is a special interest? Well, you probably know it can be as specific or general as you can think of. It can be anything from a subject at school to maps to VIPs, and then you can go into those subjects. It can be cars and vehicles. But I like to think that I take living with a special interest to a whole new level, because if you have one of those, if it's cars, you don't sleep in your garage every night if you like cars. And you don't break into a Ferrari garage every night and sleep in one of the Ferraris if you're obsessed with Ferraris. But mine's cats. So what do? I spend time with cats. I spend money on cats. I dream about cats. I sleep with cats. Obviously, I don't mean sleep with cats in the wrong way. You've got to bear in mind with me, I have speech and language issues. And it's a bit like one of those old faulty zips which on a jacket doesn't fit. If you work hard at it and take your time, it's going to work. But if not, you're going to end up having the bottom bit up here and the coggles aren't going to fit properly. It can make you sound a bit like the BFG. Or make rude innuendo jokes and embarrass you when you're not trying to. But two things that stick to me in my mind over this was, I used to dog walk for a friend, and she's got a working Cocker Spaniel, and anybody knows the breed knows it's an incredibly high energy dog that does not get tired. I was walking the dog, and a lady came along one day and said, "Oh, what a nice dog." And I meant to say, he was like the Duracell bunny. You can tell I'm reading this so I don't get it wrong again. I said Durex bunny. I don't think I have to explain what Durex is. It's not much better if you correct yourself quickly or if you know people. I had another instance where I went to an animal health class, and I was talking to a friend about my nervous, uptight cat. And I know what the word neurotic means. I described the cat as erotic. I correctly corrected myself, but it was still really embarrassing. So anyway, back to special interests. If you are full of this subject, if you're so obsessed, you spend so much time and money and effort on it, if you could choose it, you could choose to do anything with it. You could make a career out of yourself, or work hard at an ordinary job and work up the ranks, or find love and have a nice family, or create world peace. You would have things like being rich and successful and famous, or having a family with a husband or wife, or a Nobel Prize. But you can't, unfortunately. So what do I have instead? I have, why isn't it working? Oh, that's it. I have 3 cats at the very least in my house at a time. And I have a house full of cats things. And as you can see, I don't mean things for the cats, I mean cat junk. Now you probably are thinking, you're exaggerating, Daisy. You could probably work out how to choose a sort of one. But I can promise you, it is not possible to choose your special interest. I met a girl at an A.S.D group whose special interest was a bit like having a celeb crush. She would basically pick someone, a VIP, out of the media or whatever, and fixate on them for a while. And at this particular meetup, she was discussing the fact that in the past she had fixated on Donald Trump and was not comfortable with it at the time, and was worried that with so much politics in the media, she was going to go back to Donald Trump. And whether this was possible to change, of course, which it probably isn't. Now you can imagine, your mind is so full of the subject because you're so obsessed, can be a bit like water flowing to the lowest point by any means possible, by any cracks, which can sound from the outside a bit like the dog from Up. Do you know the one that keeps talking about squirrels halfway through the sentence? Hi, how are you, cats? What you been up to, cats? Isn't it nice weather outside? Oh look, it's a cat! And inside our heads, or if we go on a rant about the subject, it can sound a bit more like the rabbit song from Chas and Dave. You know, rabbit, 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 cat, 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 cat. Now, I say you can't choose what it is, but you can choose what to do with it. There are many things you can do, from the artistic to the tech to finding a job. For example, this is a couple of collages of photos I've done for my paid hobby, which is animal healing and holistic health, specialising on cats, on my social media, which brings me up to paid hobbies and jobs and social media. So blogging and vlogging are very in at the moment, and there's always someone who's really interested in it. So try that. And social media is really good for that because it's kind of like a blog, but it's not as inflexible or something. And the other one is, of course, for making a job out of it. Now, there are some special interests which have already got a job out there. If you're into mechanics, be a mechanic. If you know the ins and outs of London, be a tour guide or a bus instructor or something. But if not, why not make a new job out of this? What I'm doing now could be a bit like doing that, because a lot of high functional autistics are very proud of what they are, and also being an autistic means that you know quite a lot about it. I don't think there's anybody else doing exactly what I'm doing, going around doing stand-up and doing this at the moment. So it's a real big niche market. So make sure you can find a job or make a job. If you can't do that, there are other things. You can do small lectures, or you can do art. Now over there are 3 scrapbooks. One, which you can probably see, is about the ones I've just told you about, my special interest. And the 2 others are the ones that I have not told you about, which is planning and organising parties. I suggest when you have a bit of time, have a look through them. I've updated it so you can see the different ways you can do it, because it's a really good way of venting your special interest. Which brings me into the last thing you can do, themed parties. They are perfect for what you are. You've got collected enough games and stuff to decorate it, you know the information, you can do quizzes, and you can have fun knowing that they don't know the answers and you do, and that makes you feel quite happy. Now, I could go on and on about this, but instead I should go on with the story. So, you'll get a diagnosis and it can get very complex from around there. It's a bit like suddenly going on an island. There's only so much help they have, and it's such a confusing world for 2 reasons. Firstly, I don't think there is a group of society out there that has so much acronyms and jargon and terms of phrase and specialist language for it. It's so confusing. I mean, NT, Aspie, A.S.D, high functioning, low functioning, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 45. What the heck does it all mean? The first thing I thought when I was told I had A.S.D is, isn't that a type of illegal drug? NT, the 2 things that come to mind is it's either a theatre in London or it's CT's big brother. And Aspie sounds like an asthmatic donkey. And just to confuse you even more, they start chopping and changing. I've heard that apparently Aspie is no longer used, apart from us Aspies have not got this memo, because I learned Aspie from an Aspie. And I was told that now, as well as A.S.D, not instead of, but as well as, so you have to, another one you have to remember is A.S.C. So instead of disorder, it's a condition now. And it reminds me of trying to remember things and learn things at school. The two things that come to mind is that I spent in secondary school 4 years out of 5 learning that atoms are made out of protons, electrons and neutrons. We all know this, it's all common knowledge, right? Apart from in year 5, I'm told that there's no such thing as a neutron because it does a bunch of electrons and protons. Why did we learn this? Like a boy said, why were we lied to? And the other one is, does anybody know whether Pluto is a planet or not at the moment? Because since I've learned that, it's gone from being a planet to not a planet to a planet, not a planet, and I give up trying to keep it in touch. The other thing which is very difficult and confusing is the sense of us against them, the sense of like fighting and the gap between us, because you've suddenly gone into a tug of war rope, but you are the rope. I know that after years of my mum being my biggest ally as a fellow dyslexic person, she suddenly was on one side of the rope, telling me that I should adapt to the rest of the world because the NTs are the majority, and so therefore I should mimic them and pretend to be them. And on the other side was my invisible friend saying, well, the only people who matters and understands you are us, so just ignore it. Mind you, I don't know quite what it means about being able to understand me, because I don't understand myself. You've got to understand that us as a species are a paradoxical and hypocritical species. We don't understand ourselves, or you NT, but we expect you to understand yourselves as an NT and us, and it does not occur that it would be any other way. I remember walking down the aisle in a supermarket, asking my mum to explain something as an NT, and she said, I can't because I don't understand it myself. Generally did not occur, but that would be the case. Kind of reminds me of the book Men and for Mars, Women and for Venus, about how men and women work so differently, they're like they're on a different planet. As far as I'm concerned, if men are from Mars, NTs are from Alpha Centauri. You do things like ask me how I am when you don't give a damn for the answer. Why are you bothering? Why have you wasted your breath and my time and yours? And why are you surprised when I answer? Okay, so I'm going to stop with my rant for a bit, and I'm going to try and explain myself, because I'm starting to feel like I am coming across as a rude, unfeeling, selfish, self-centered, unempathetic and unsympathetic person. It's not the case. For me, it's actually more the opposite, because in practice I don't know the difference between empathy and sympathy. I know the definition, but I can't practice it. So they sort of merge for me, and as you know, if you get two small subjects and put it together, it makes a big subject. And it's quite a big choice to do things. I want you to just imagine for a bit that you are a kid again, and you love every kind of sweetened chocolate there has ever been in the world. Don't know if anybody knows the book A Giraffe and Pelly and Me, but in there is exactly that. There's a sweet shop that has exactly that. You walk past this sweet shop with your parents, and they say to you, you can have 100 grams of one of the sweets or chocolates, just one, can't have anything else. How the heck do you choose? You love them all equally, how the heck do you choose? And so I do two things. The first is I get more information. So the equivalent in this is like saying, how much money are you willing to spend, Mum? Only £1? Well, I'm going to have penny sweets then, aren't I? And it can be a bit difficult, because if they don't want to give you an answer, it's, your friends come over to you and they've said, I've had a bad day. What kind of a bad day have you had? Have you just bashed your toe on the way into the office? Are you late? Have you been chewed out by the boss? Are you having difficulty with one of your colleagues? Or is it something worse? Have you got a terminal illness? Is someone died? Has someone you love got terminal illness? Have you been sacked? Are you going for divorce? I.e., am I going to have to take you to a bar or a cafe and moan with you? Or am I going to let you cry on my shoulder, take you to the doctors or go to the funeral with you? And if you don't know which one's which, then it's a bit difficult because you could end up doing the wrong one. The other thing I do is I work with what I've got. What I've got is me. So I ask myself what I would feel. It's incredibly flawed because it only works if they're anything like you. A good story to explain this is that a few years ago my father figure walked out November before Christmas, and I was dating a guy who lived in Kenya at the time, and he told me lots of stories about it. And I was very vocal that I wanted to go. So the minute my stepfather walked out, my mum said you could. I was reluctant, not because I didn't want to go, but because I would not want to be left alone at Christmas just after my husband's left. My mum's had plans, so I thought it was fine, but my mum's plans went to dust when she went ill, and I felt guilty ever since, even though she told me that it was alright because she didn't have to worry. So, if I was doing just my stand-up, the name on this would be called Being Different or Being a Contradiction. The reason why I've done sensory input is because for me, there's some counterintuitive things about it. Before I go into that, I'm just going to tell you a quick analogy about what I mean by being different or being a contradiction. I can do incredibly complex things, but I can't do simple things. Like today, I have and have managed to write and produce and perform and memorise a complex play, but I can't manage to unpack the dishwasher like everybody else. When it comes to sensory input, one of the things which isn't complicated, of course, is the five senses. And people who know a lot about it probably know that people can be oversensitive or undersensitive to stuff, one or more of the senses. They probably also know that that means that you can seek less or more of it. But what may not come to your mind is that it's not necessarily the way you think it is. For instance, you might think that if you're oversensitive, you seek less. It could be the case. You could also be seeking more, or both, or neither. And same goes with undersensitivity. When it comes to me, this is a picture I have done on what hopefully looks like a warm day of my usual get-up. Just so that you understand how it works, it's not to do with temperature, because I get cold quite easily. So I always have the hood scarf, which is a hood and a scarf together. I always have the mat. But as you can see today, I always wear these. They might not necessarily be done up. The hood scarf might not be as wrapped around as it is, but it's always there. But you might not be able to see. The reason why I've got my hands in my pockets is because I don't ever wear gloves, regardless of how cold it is outside. I just don't like the feel of them. And also, underneath the boots, I'm not wearing socks in that picture. And that's, again, nothing to do with the temperature. It's actually to do with the feel of the wool inside. If the wool is soft and new and fluffy, I never wear socks, regardless of winter or summer. If it's starting to get worn down and what I describe as slimy from the dirt, I always wear socks regardless of winter or summer. On the other side, what I've been told is that it's very bizarre that I like hugs. I seek out hugs, particularly from my mum. And with taste, which is another one of mine, I hate the texture of nuts. Not the taste of nuts, the texture of nuts. The hungry hippos used to feed to your kids, those little snacks. I was told when I was a teenager that they had nuts in it, and I used to eat them for things. It doesn't taste like it, doesn't feel like a nut to me, so it's fine. And on the other side of that, one of my favourite snacks is a Waitrose cheesy bun, one of the square ones, if you know the ones I mean. Cut in half with melted Stilton or blue cheese in it. There's nothing else, just that, just melt it. Cut it open and melt it. I know it's strong. I know it seems like a really strong thing just to eat, but it's one of my favourite snacks. Now, on your tables you may have noticed there are fiddly stuff. And there's also some information on the sheets of more examples of sensory, mostly sensory input. While you do that, I want to tell you a story that I have found really interesting, because it's sort of opposite of me with the heat. My mum and I were going through, she's on a help group for parents of autistic kids, and she was flicking through some of the stories. My mum read me this one where it was -10 outside and the kid wasn't wearing enough clothing. The parent was like, how do I tell them to wear clothing? And obviously it was so important and it was a big issue for my mum. I just turned to her and said, yeah, and? I turned to her and said that because I have never fainted from the heat. Wearing that pretty much 24/7, I have not ever fainted from the heat. I've just taken my coat off because I'm too hot. And as far as I understand it, I'm not a scientist, but as far as I understand it, I think our bodies heat up and cool down slower. So if they're cooling down slower, it isn't a problem. But if it also, he's probably alright to know when he is getting cold. But cold to you may not be cold to them. And that's why I was so blasé about it. Mine can't find the key. It's basically about communication. There are two sides to this. The first slide, this slide, is the one that most people know. Most people know that A.S.Ds might not understand when NTs use irony, sarcasm, exaggeration, terms of expression, and make jokes. A good example of stories for that is that one of my old friends has a brother who has high functioning autism. My mum's also friends with her mum. My mum always used to tell me that when she phoned up and he answered the phone, the conversation would go a bit like this. Hi, how are you? They would exchange their highs, and then she would ask, is your mum at home? Now to you, that obviously means can you go and find her? But what he would do is he'd go yes and do nothing, because what's the code for thing is not, it's a question, it's not a code. So what happens then is she has to say can you go and find her, because otherwise he won't. When it works for me, the way it works for me is there's a sort of argument in my head when something like that comes up, where there's part of me which goes, this can't be taken literally because I know it not to be true. And there's the other part, probably the autistic part, which is taking it literally. And a story about how that would work with me is that I've collected a lot of cat games, and I've got a bingo cat breeds of the world. And I was doing a games party with playing that game, and my friend turned to another friend and said, I didn't realise there were so many cat breeds. I thought there was just black, white and ginger. Now I'd had a conversation about Burmeses and Burmans with him, because I have a cat which is a Burman. So I knew he at least knew one other. So this was quite confusing. So I queried it and he tells me he's exaggerating. What I used to do, because of the confusion, was I used to blow it off as, oh, I'm joking too, or I was exaggerating too or something. But now I know that's because of my confusion, and I feel silly. The other side of this is that I think definitely in high functioners, and I know it's with me, we are capable of making jokes, using irony and sarcasm, and using terms of phrase, because I've used them in this presentation. But you may not necessarily know that, because we speak sometimes a bit like a robot. Knock, knock, who's there? Not you. Ha, 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 ha. I always used to have to explain that I was joking or teasing to my mum. And then it was a bit of a week, I remember, when I watched this guy talking about the fact that we are a bit like robots with our voice sometimes. Because if you're using irony and you don't use the ironic voice, then you're not using irony, are you? The other thing is, and I don't know quite why it is, but I think deadpan is brilliant for people who are autistic, because there's something in us which are naturally deadpan. Sometimes it's because we're not trying to make people laugh, like I said at the beginning, but sometimes it's also just because of the way we work with a bit matter of fact. It's obvious to me, why is everybody else laughing, you know? Last, but definitely not least, I will talk about co-morbidities and general anxiety disorder and anxiety disorders in general for that. Now, they're said to be linked. I think they're so linked they're joined at the hips. I've had both from an early age, and I do not know the difference between one and the other. I don't know where one begins and the other ends. To imagine what it's like, I want you to imagine that your normal anxiety, everybody's everyday anxiety, is a bit like having a health and safety inspector inside your head, going through and working out the dangers of everything. Now, if you're a bit more anxious than normal, your health and safety inspector might be a bit more neurotic and a bit overzealous with everything. Or he might be yelling in your ear everything that he's done. That's fine. When it becomes, as far as I'm concerned, a general anxiety disorder or a combined anxiety disorder, it's when you listen to them too much, and they're neurotic, and they're yelling in your ear. It can make you feel a bit like the girl or boy who cried wolf, or Chicken Little. I mean, is the sky falling in? Is the sky falling in? Oh, as it was with me. Will I die getting hit by a car on my way back home, the day before my birthday, around the corner from my house, and I don't live to see my next birthday? It's a genuine worry I've had in the past. And you'll get GAD when you have autism, which is pretty much birth, from my understanding. So you worry all your time. When I was little, one of the main reoccurring worries I had was that this thing here, my piggy bank. You can probably just about see there's a peephole. I would be worried that they would steal my pocket money, basically. And so therefore what I would do to stop them is I would hide my key in such a place that they couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. I would look for ages, try and not them. In fact, the reason why I think I haven't got it anymore is because we lost it and then we moved. And at Christmas, I would plot that I would give them, if they came in through my window, chocolate money to fool them. Only I'd be really worried that they would not, but I would eat the money, and then they would come. So what I would do, you can see it's folded down on this picture here. I would do exactly that. I would fold down the sides and keep the wrappers. It's totally realistic, isn't it? I would I'd love to carry on talking to you about how completely bizarre I am. But I've just seen a cat outside the thing, and I need to go and see it. So I'll be back in a moment.